How's everyone doing? I'll let the panel introduce themselves. I'm going to start with a question, and then everything after this introduction will be just kind of conversational. So I'll feed you guys questions. Feel free to bounce ideas off of each other. And then like what was stated, there'll be 15 minutes at the end for you guys to ask questions. So as artists, how do you feel about the use of AI in creating art for commercial purposes?
Sure. So real quick, I'm Aaron Hamilton-Cook, producer at BioWare. My hot take on that is I would say that with the way that AI art has been created in terms of the model and the way that it was initially architected, I would discourage the use for commercial purposes. It's a bit problematic that the way that all of these various artists had their work effectively stolen to create a tool to generate new content. I think it's fine to use as reference, but you need to do your homework. You need to understand the community. You need to understand what exists and what the model has pulled from to create your reference material so that you can either honor that work correctly or you can go far enough away from it that you aren't infringing on somebody else's work. If you're going to use it that way, just out of the box, you need to really do your homework and do your due diligence.
Hey guys, I'm Jayson Whitmore. I'm an executive creative director at a company called Laundry. And we do a lot of advertising campaigns, and so we are in the thick of creating very quickly most of the time. We'll get a pitch in, and usually we have, 2 days sometimes to create the best and greatest work that's out there, and basically go up against 2 other companies who doesn't, basically we don't get paid for pitches, which is interesting. So if you lose all of the money that you put into the pitch. So it's very important to stay on top of your game. In recent since AI has really come out, I've actually, we've experimented with playing around with abstract ideas at the beginning of a project. And so what we'll do is, I just did something for the boys, an open for the boys. And we were experimenting with superheroes, and there was a lot of things in my head that just didn't exist as reference on the internet. So, I went to, what is it Wally? Or no, Dolly, thank you. So Dolly too, sorry. As you can see, this is very new to me as well, but I typed in a few things, and then some really interesting images came up and gave me a lot of ideas to just not only, in the beginning phase and conceptual phase, you have to talk to the client and really get them on board of what your concept is. A lot of times you present images that are alongside of that so they can kind of understand what it is in your vision is. And if you have to do it very quickly, sometimes it's very difficult. So, I typed in a few things, and up it came an amazing reference image that I was able to take to the client and say, is it, this is my idea, this is what I'm thinking, just to kind of get them on board of a yes or a no. So in that aspect, it saves us a lot of time. So I use it as a creative tool.
I'm Nathaniel Howe, the Executive Creative Director and founder of Nathaniel Howe Studios. I work in the same type of industry as Jayson and deal with the same type of pitching scenarios and timelines. I think AI is the most incredible thing that has happened literally since like the internet. I don't think it's like a hype train, AR, VR, little flash in a pan that kind of fizzled too. I think that it is fundamentally going to change the way people think and work, and I think that it's good to get on board and treat it as your co-pilot and let it be, Alfred and you be Batman or Batwoman, because it's incredible. The biggest thing to me is I don't really use it ever for the core thing that the client sees. I use it to broaden my perspective. So I use Midjourney. I think Midjourney has even better visuals than DALL-E. I think that it's actually mind-blowing. And I'm, first and foremost, I just love design. I'm passionate about design, and I'm passionate about figuring out what things look like. I love back when I was a more active designer, I would love a blank Photoshop document because I never knew what it would turn into and where we would go with it. And that's what I fell in love with design. So playing with Midjourney, like when I first got on there, I didn't even sleep for like 4 days because it was like, what would it look like to have this word and that word together? What would it look like if that was underwater? What would this, you know, like, and it was just fluid and lucid. And it reminded me of the passion I felt when I first started getting into design. So I love it. And then ChatGPT is amazing. Sometimes I have to write sensitive emails to clients that need to be firm, but also need to set, you know, a loving and collaborative tone. And I run a small studio, you know, so I have to sometimes be the bad guy and the good guy in a interesting dynamic. And what I'll do is I'll write a draft of what I think I want to say, and then I'll ask ChatGPT, how, you know, should I look at this in a different way? Am I missing anything? Would you rewrite this? Can you give me an example of writing this as if I'm more stern? Can you give me an example that I'm more flexible? And I think the key to all of this stuff, and what I'm really passionate about with it all, is the quality of prompting. And I think prompting is the key to AI, which what I also love about that is it brings back in that human dynamic and the artistry of that, and the ability to craft and shape and use it as a tool. So I think it's really an interesting word, prompting. And it made me, as an introspective person, it made me think about what prompts do we give our clients when we speak to them anyway? What prompts do I give a designer when I kick them off on a pitch? A lot of people are really bad at prompting. Like, Jayson, I'm sure you've seen some pitch that is, make it dynamic and cool. And you're like, well, those words don't even mean anything. Like, you know, to get, out of the box thinking. But like to get a lot more textural and nuanced and like a lot more focused and articulate on how you're prompting people and exploring what that means in your own life in reality is very interesting as well.
Nice. Well, thanks for joining us. And based on what you guys had kind of said, I want to follow up with something. So my background before education was advertising. And when I first got into using DALL-E and Midjourney, it felt like I was kind of back in the war room. That's what we used to call it. So we get a pitch in, right? A client. Everyone would come in. We'd know what it was about, and then everyone would break out and come up with their own ideas. And then you'd come back and you kind of put it up on the wall. Everyone would take stuff down or put new stuff up. And I feel like there's this back and forth, right, with these AIs, whether it's DALL-E or Midjourney. So I guess the main question would be is, what are some ethical considerations? Because I know that's obviously a hot topic for everyone. But if you're using it at the start of the creativity and you're bouncing around ideas that a lot of us have had and reused, you know, what are the ethical concerns there? Because there are some. How do you feel you can use it, you know, ethically? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses?
Yeah, I mean, my thought there is the cat's out of the bag, right? The Midjourney, DALL-E, they were created in some unethical ways. There are artists that would not have liked their artwork to be included in some of those things. ChatGPT, there are published works where those authors would not like their work to be contributing to that algorithm, but it exists. The tool exists, so you have to use it like a tool, and you have to recognize that it is good for concepting, but you really should take the time to understand and sort of reverse engineer and look at what is the source material it's pulling from, so that you aren't inadvertently using something that maybe had an offensive tone, that once it went through the algorithm, it got fed out in a different way, or you aren't contributing to disinformation accidentally. There's a lot of things to do to make sure that you do your homework, so that you aren't inadvertently causing harm. I think that's the most important thing, is making sure that you, if you see that like a signature has been blurred, you go try to find that reference image, so that if you are going to use this in a more commercial way, you are giving proper credit where it's due. And if you are, you know, trying to do that, you can go look at the rest of that artist's work and find more reference material that expands on what you're trying to deliver on.
Yeah, I mean, ethics is always it's I think at the core of AI right now in the design community. You know, I love what you're saying in terms of reverse engineering, and What's interesting is that, those of us who came before AI had to figure it out, even way before AI, say take that back to the early 2000s where we're actually scanning images from books. And then you take that into, pre-AI, which is, you're searching for images on the internet and, pulling references, cutting out pieces, kind of, mashing it up. And that takes a lot of time. And I think what's really interesting for me, and I've just been thinking a lot about this, is, for using it as a tool, is, you never want to use an AI image and present it as your own, I guess. I mean, I definitely feel like there's going to be a moment where, like sampling in music or like other things that have kind of come out over the years, that you can mash up a bunch of stuff. And if you are a master at prompting or telling what the AI what it is that you're looking for, I think that there's going to be a moment where there's going to be brand new things that are happening. Like I've seen some images of fashion that's coming out that is completely blowing my mind, completely AI generated. I think that is going to push the fashion world into some place that we've never seen. So in that aspect of it, where it's thinking differently and really pushing the boundaries of the visual images that you never knew existed. So I think it's sampling all these different things and mixing it up and spitting out something that's brand new, and you're just like, okay, that's amazing. But it is important not to present it. It's such an ethical question because it just depends on what images are you able to generate from AI, and who gets the credit. You are generating that image through your words and crafting and sculpting, but it is pulling from references of other people. So I think that's the biggest dilemma right now, and that's why I always want to use it as a tool that pushes my creativity and inspires me, but I would never use that in a final product. I would never put that up as I would be inspired by it, by like how we are through all of creativity, in humanity is based on reference. You're referencing different things. You're mixing that up. This is just a tool that does it real quick. So I'm undecided. I think it's a really great creative tool, but I also don't think you should be making an AI image unless they're, and then presenting it as like, this is my work. But then again, if you come up with something brand new, I don't know. It's a hot topic.
Yeah.
I have like an unpopular take probably, but I'm kind of old school, and I come from the era of like, hey, you have 2 days to win a pitch, and you're pitching against really talented artists, and it's like land the plane, win the pitch, secure the bag, get the money, get the job. And I remember back in the day when I was just really becoming more of a designer and less of an animator. Christina Aguilera in the NBA, they're like, we need a hot look for this thing. She's going to perform Ain't No Other Man out on the court, and we need a style for this. And I was on Flickr, and I was trying to look up sculptures and statues and bronze, things. And I found this one sculpture that had a shape to it that was so beautiful to me, and it mimicked like the flow of a basketball shot that I had in my style frame. And I was like, I don't know how to make that in 3D. And I said to the artist next to me, I was like, yo, I just want to cut this out and put it in the style frame. Is that wrong? I was like, no. And he's like, you have to win the pitch. He's like, your job is to win this pitch. He's like, I don't care. Cut that out. Use the whole damn image. Whatever you do, we need to show these people something that gets them to say yes. Later, somebody can remake it in 3D, whatever. It's not your job to figure that out. It's your job to win the pitch. I'm still, as a small business owner, kind of in that hunter mindset where like I'm not very interested in debating the ethics of it. It to me is a tool for us to win pitches and to do better creative work.
So I think that's really interesting because going back to advertising, we used to pull from stock photography a lot and then leave it up to the client to decide, do you want to leave that image in with it and we pay for it, or do you want us to shoot something from scratch, right? That's similar. I think that all comes down to you're coming up with creative ideas, getting feedback. We all create things from things we've seen in the past. So is the biggest fear, the ethical concern of it, is how fast AI can do it compared to us. Because if you say your thoughts are all original, right, there's a little bit of, discretion there.
Well,
of how
I'd like
true.
to dispel that. There's no original thought that happens anymore. Like, it's all been done before. It's just how you remix it, how you rehash it.
The great artist
Yeah.
quote or whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
But you know what's funny is like if in some weird Twilight Zone universe, this was a Full Sail panel about like the automobile has been invented and what is going to happen to our horses now, and like, should we worry about this and that? Like, who cares how fast it does it? Like, it's the tool of the future. Everyone's going to use it. It's going to change every industry. It's going to change everything. It'll change the way we consume and think and what value transactions and creative means. And no one knows how that's going to really unfold. But the one thing that I bet would be for sure is it makes it a more challenging road to stand out and to get ownership and to own the frame of a creative idea. And I think it actually heightens my favorite part of my job now, which is pitching design and pitching creativity. That's my favorite thing that I do now. I rarely get in and open up Photoshop and like make the design these days. I just pitch other people's designs, and I love that. But like owning the frame of how you get a client to look at something and why they're looking at it a certain way and why it matters. You look at the branding of this Hall of Fame. They have all these unique shapes going on with 13. They have these wild like moon patterns and astrology things. When they're coming up with that concept, they had to have the reason for that. They had to get a whole team of people on board. It's printed all over. It's motion graphics. It's everything in the whole event that we'll go to tomorrow. They had a framework that they owned with passion and human thought. Whether AI came up with the first look of that or not doesn't really matter. The frame, the way you communicate it, the way you get buy-in from people, that goes up in value, and you have to be more articulate and better at it and more passionate to stand out in this age where things are going to get harder to stand out in.
Yeah, it is interesting because, I mean, I don't know if you guys, what programs are you in? Just out of curiosity. Game art? So you're mostly gamers? Design? Okay. All right, so, okay, right on. Well, hi. So, if you're doing projects and you're typing in Google and you're trying to find that one reference image, you have to be very specific. And sometimes, right now I'm working with melting ice and typography and how that refracts through that melting ice. Well, I have to actually go in with a Houdini artist and work with them and trying to get that. And what's interesting is I try to find that reference just on my own, just typing it in Google. I'm sure it exists somewhere out there, but even if I'm on Behance, which I usually, is that how you say Behance? I usually go there to find creative references, and it's really about how you type it in or how you prompt it or how you explain what it is that your vision is. And I think that they're going to become masters at that in AI. And much like sampling, it's a hard one. Again, I think that people are going to be able to make art out of AI that is original to how they've been able to sculpt it through, through using multiple AI programs. You could take one and bring it to the next, and bring it into the next, and start to really sculpt it that way. And there's going to be somebody who is the master at that. That's going to be the next, the next big artist that's out there.
Yeah, I do think that when it comes to how you use these tools, they're just that. They're tools, right? Like, this isn't Dolly and Midjourney aren't gonna replace people. There's definitely been layoffs that have happened when these tools came out. I think those players that made those decisions made the wrong call, right? They were thinking this is gonna reduce my overhead, not it's gonna enhance my team's capacity. And that's where they went the wrong direction. You can't really replace that human component where creativity comes in and people are, like, you can feel the difference between an AI generated artwork and a human generated artwork that's inspired by AI. Like, you can really get into, like, there's a certain soul, a certain character to that that I don't think will ever be replaced or can ever be replicated.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've heard these mashups just in audio of like Ariana Grande singing "Oops, I Did It Again," and it's her voice, And it sounds pretty realistic, but but the thing that worries me, and that's a really great point. I think that a lot of people are looking at it to reduce the overhead. So is the future, I think it's going to be interesting. There's going to be two futures in front of us. One is going to be like just, basic recycled ideas that are out there to get something out. And then there's going to be this like innovation that you've never seen before. And, some business people who are all about money are just going to want to crank out certain things, and that works for their bottom line. But there is a soul to every experience that you've had in your life that brought you here in this moment right now, that forms how you want to express yourself and put that out into the world, how you solve problems when you're trying to figure out a creative solution. And AI, I think, is really great to be able to help you do that, and might do it faster. I don't know what the future is going to be, if there really is sentient Google or whatever that is out there. That scares the shit out of me, but are they going to be? I would be really interested to see if this entity, it could produce something as amazing as a human.
Well, I mean, the thing that drives that spark, that like where that emotion comes from in artworks, is a lived experience, right? And AI isn't getting a lived experience. It's just replicating and referencing other lived experiences.
It's like the ultimate sampler.
Yeah,
But it still can make you feel. I mean, I like the first time I played with Midjourney, I typed in something that I wanted to see, and it made me feel emotion to see it. It was like unbelievable. And I think that for sure, it is going to make audience, general public, and the competition smarter and more savvy, and to demand more out of entertainment and out of the quality of storytelling. I think it's going to change the way people think. For some areas good, some areas not so good. Hopefully we don't end up in like Terminator 2, getting crushed by these things. But honestly, I think AI could make you feel emotion for sure. AI could write something, or probably very close to doing it all by itself, and you could watch it and it will fool you. And if not now, then probably in a month or like a week at the rate that it is exponentially going. But I still think what these guys are talking about, I agree with, and that's where the power of framing and ownership and speaking about an idea to somebody else and getting them on board with the why behind something, I think that goes up in value. It's kind of like plugins for After Effects back in the day. It's like, whoa, Starglow came out. It's on every commercial ever. Oh, 3D stroke. Let's use it in every... Bank of America needs something? How about a little Starglow? How about a little 3D stroke? And it's like, it's just the flavor of the month. It's just like this thing that you add on top for no real reason. But like, I think this tool, we can really use it to tell amazing stories, and we can use it to empower us as creators.
But what's interesting about that, I mean, do you guys watch South Park at all? There was one of the latest episodes about Chat GPT, and it's basically what is it? Kyle's talking to his girlfriend or this girl that he likes or whoever. I can't remember the character names. I'm terrible with that. But I was watching it and I was just like, oh, he's just like recycling, trying to get her, but not really paying attention. And then when he actually sits down to have a conversation with her, she's reciting all these things that she felt from him, that didn't exist because he never wrote them. So that is really going to be on you guys to own and really have the talent to back that up, and not just make yourself look a certain way, because especially like, if you're seeking a job, we will find out. We will know. As soon as you walk into our studio, we will know if your work is authentic or if it's something that, you just put out that either you were a small part of with a big team, or you put out something that was generated and not yours. Yeah. So you have to really back that up with skill.
And to that point, and like to finish one thought that I didn't even complete the thought on, actually, because I kind of escaped me, but I was starglowed. But when new tools come out, there's a rush of excitement with it. But then what really matters is the fundamentals of storytelling and of human emotion and of making people feel. And I think that like paying attention to that and how you communicate That's what matters more. Of what does your image, your story, your song communicate, and what does it make humans feel? And this is a tool, even though it's unlike those After Effects plugins that I'm talking about, but it's got that buzz around it the same way, but it still strengthens the importance of the fundamentals.
Yeah, I think a good example of how you take it as reference and make it your own. If anyone who's familiar with the band Polyphia, Tim Henson, their guitarist, for the song Playing God, there's this really technical, very complicated part where he's playing what sounds like an arpeggiator because he went and programmed an arpeggiator, which is just a really low-tech AI tool for generating content, printed some tracks in Ableton, figured out what those notes were, learned to play it really well, and then did a live tracked version of it where he can add his own expression to it and really give it its own sort of soul. And it's not that like it wrote the music for him. He still had to make choices around, oh, you know what? It would be better if this note was actually this one instead. It would be better if this was 16th notes rather than 8th notes. Like he still had to make those decisions, but he brought an expressive nature to something that originated from something else generating a prompt for him.
And you know what's interesting? Now that you guys are talking about this, it's like, it's we'll see in the future if AI can feel, and really, I think at the core of our human experience is that we see things that make us feel, and when we see other artwork or movies or references or anything like that, we can pinpoint or have a related experience to that we've actually felt, So I think the best commercial work, I think the best advertising work, I think the best anything is something that will make you feel and understand it versus just it looks great, So that's being conscious. That's your soul or whatever you want to call it. It's the human experience, and I'm curious to see if they're going to be able to ever replicate that through AI.
So listening to you guys talk, I think something's interesting. You guys come from mostly different disciplines, right? But inside your industries, I'm sure there's companies that are kind of racing for the bottom. They're recycling ideas. They're making those business decisions to save money. And then you have the people that are in the forefront. They're coming up with new things, and that's expensive, right? So is AI really that much different, right? For coming up with these ideas. If you have the artist on the back end, you'll have studios that are producing bigger ideas, better ideas, because they're using it as a tool, but they still have those people to say, this is a good idea, this is a good direction.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about expanding capacity, right? So for those who don't understand really what producers are, we're glorified project managers, right? And
creatives really need them.
Yeah, and so there's always a timeline, there's always a deadline, and so we always look at a person's capacity to deliver work. How many hours in the day do they have to actually deliver content, right? Nobody works 100% of the time. People take bathroom breaks, they have conversations, there's meetings. So of their available working hours, how much can I pack in? And then, so that's their capacity. And then we have scope. So how much work is there to do? And these kinds of tools reduce scope so that we can expand capacity. That's where the value prop for me is. Now you have to have a team that is okay with the questionable ethics of it. You don't want to force these tools on people who don't want to use them. That's only going to lead to issues with retention and attrition in your staff. But if you have a team that's open to it, that is interested in leveraging this technology and leveraging the tool set, you can cut down on the concepting phase significantly and considerably. And that can lead to more time to iterate on the idea and to get past the what is the idea?
Mm-hmm. That's such a good point because, as you were talking about that, I was just thinking about, when you are, at least for me, when I'm in my creative director mode, sitting there working with an artist, really trying to explain to them what my vision is, and helping them help me get that vision out of my head is a process. It's expensive. It's very expensive. So as a small business owner, I used to be as well, and with Nate, and just in any business when we're looking out for budgets, because everything costs money. In my line of work, again, and I said this a little bit earlier, we have to pitch for free. And a pitch could cost $15,000. It could cost $30,000. And that 30 grand that you just spend on that pitch, if you win it, if it's like a $300,000 job, and you spent, say, 50 grand, now you have 250,000 to work with, so that you can remain profitable. So it's like, and you have a markup and you have all these things. So if you are spending more on the pitch and you're losing a lot, which happens, then you go out of business, right? That's the hard part. So what got me really excited about pitching, all of my ideas for Amazon and the boys is that, and I came up with like 10 concepts, it was a lot. But the whole idea was to move through that creation phase much faster, and the idea phase and the ideating phase, and just to even have a frame as a reference to my artists. Because sometimes I'll explain something to my artists, but if I don't have a reference for that, I'm just leaving it up to them to interpret what it is in my head. And I found out over the years of doing this a lot that 9 times out of 10, they're probably not going to get what you're saying. So this actually really helps jumpstart that process. It saves money. But we're using it as a tool.
So kind of just going off that as well. So do you ever feel like something created by AI will ever be considered original? Based on the last statements that we had where we've all kind of collaged ideas together to come up with something new.
So it depends on how you consider something original. This has been tested in the courts already. The courts feel, and it is the judicial opinion, that AI art is not original works. It cannot be copyrighted. I think that the untested case is if you make your own model, you source it with your own content, and you create works from that. At that point, can that be copyrighted? That is an untested legal theory at this point.
Well, and that's an interesting thing that we've been reading about because, I've, over the last 15 years or whatever, I've generated, paid for, and bought and sold, hundreds of thousands of style frames. I buy and sell design. So I have all these images. And I was talking to a friend of mine about training a model based on, like a lot of our jobs have similar themes to them, sports design and things like that. It's like, just have an AI model that's already our own work, and it's like, hey, we need a sports pitch. We don't want it to be on the nose. Don't use any basketball floor textures in this. Make it something cool. Mix in a pinball theme. Do it in our style of this 3D typography. Make it impactful and bold and iconic, and then spit it out. And it's like, I don't like that. It's too busy. Make it more simple and iconic. Boom. And then it's like, instead of paying somebody $1,000 a day to do that, maybe it's done almost instantly. Those things are scary because they could fundamentally destroy our business and change our business in big ways. But like as a disruptive creative person, I'm kind of, getting popcorn ready and like excited to see where everything goes,
That is interesting because you still need to come up with the idea kind of, I guess, and to be able to describe from experience, it will be very interesting because you will have to have other people. I can see some formulaic stuff for sure, and that being very useful in that. But I love this point of like taking your own stuff and running it through. And I kind of feel like it's, I liken it to music. It's like, is it really bad that people use vocoders, or is it really bad that people use samples about samples, or they sample their own work but then send it in and it's resampling and resampling? I don't know. I mean, I feel like if you start with your own work, I think you should be able to.
Yeah, again, going back to, because originality is such a that's a very nebulous conceptual thing, right? So that's why I'm going to like copyright law, and like that's a more concrete thing that has been developed and sort of something that we can test. And when it comes to creating something that references and is influenced by derivations are protected legal works, right? So like, if you have something that is derivative of something else, there's a degree to which someone can argue, no, that's still mine. It's not different enough, but you can still sort of make some arguments that, no, I'm obviously influenced by you, but I'm doing my own thing over here, right? No one would question, who's the band? Greta Van Fleet. No one would question that they're influenced by, Led Zeppelin, but they're doing their own thing, right?
I think it's interesting what it does to people's perception of art too, specifically with something like Midjourney, because people that maybe don't have the skills or the ability to execute what's in their mind all of a sudden can create something that they feel ownership over, that brings them pleasure and joy. And, like back in the day when people get like Pinterest things going, or like, some people's Instagram is just curations of other people's art or fashion or design that they happen to love, and they all of a sudden feel ownership over it, even though they've not done anything to create the work, but they've curated the work. And I think that there's value to that too. And I think one thing that it also does is it takes people who actually really love art and design, but just can't execute it, and it gives them a way to participate in the love of design, which I think will create future opportunity for design anyway. And so I think there's some interesting things there. And it's a debate that is weird, because it's like, what really matters? It doesn't matter if this beautiful artwork expression is 100% from my mind, or is it more important, like, when somebody hears it, watches it, sees it, looks at it, whatever, that they feel a rush of emotion that's pleasurable or whatever to them, like, which one matters more? I don't know, So I think it's a fascinating topic.
I mean, and also too, I don't know why this just flashed in my head, but I thought it was really interesting. There could be a genius in somebody who might not be able to have full use of their bodies, or a disabled person that would be able to give a disabled person a voice, a form of being able to create art. And I think that that in of itself could be, could change a lot of things, because I think that unfortunately those who are not as who have challenges in their lives are unable to participate in a similar way, and I think this just helps enable them, which would be amazing.
That is amazing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So listening to you guys talk about that reminds me of, I was a production artist mostly, but we would have creative directors over us, right? And there's a lot of times you would go in with something that you felt was visually solid, but they would describe it in a way that it didn't have the emotion they were going for, right, to get that piece out. So is it really the creative director types that are going to do really well with something like Stable Diffusion or these other AI systems to get the overall scoping voice, and then that still goes to a production team to clean up and kind of put the finishing touches on it?
Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely use it as a communication tool, right? Like I think it can help validate your communication style, like you were saying, Nate, where you're using it for ChatGPT. Hey, does this email have sort of the tone that I'm trying to achieve? You can use your prompts in Midjourney and, hey, am I communicating it? Like, what is the output of my word set? How have I wordsmithed things? What is that gonna look like? And you're like, I don't want my team making that. Let me change that up. That's a little closer, but I think it's not quite there. Right? It's still helpful as a tool for a variety of disciplines. It's not just about what it produces, but it's what you do with the tool itself.
We should have done this panel where like we all answer and then there's a computer here and like they type it in and then we read out what it says.
Next year.
So the computer can crush our human ideas.
So I want to deviate from production a little bit,
Yeah.
and let's go to more like traditional artwork, because I'm sure you guys still like to go to galleries and see traditional art. I don't know if you guys have seen, but there is AI generated art that goes to a robot that can lay down brush strokes, has different pressures, so the strokes are not just, put down a line, it's the same all the way through. Is that even one step more kind of taboo for some people? Can there ever be fine art that is generated through AI, produces an oil painting, but is it a true oil painting?
So I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful wife who has a lot of experience in the fine art world, There will always be the people who say, that's not fine art. It didn't follow a particular process. You didn't make your own boiled linseed oil and mix your own pigments to make your own paint. You aren't a real artist. Those people will always exist. And there's not much you can do about them, right? I think so long as it conveys emotion and it provides meaning to someone, it's fine art.
Yeah, the TBD, I guess. I just, for me, again, like for artwork, just from my own human experiences, is like related to past experiences and bringing that to the forefront. But then again, I'm sampling the world as well. So who's I feel like AI is just kind of a mirror of that and being able to do it. I think it would be rad. I would love to see what they can come up with. I think it would be really cool.
I think it's gonna, I think it's very subjective. So, what is art to anybody is totally to that person. But I think what's going to be very interesting is as value of art is challenged and as it's potentially diluted because work is so easy to generate that is stunning and striking with that passion in it that Midjourney's so good at capturing and getting in there. It's unbelievable. What is that going to do to people's view of the value of art and design? And I think that question is, I don't know the answer to, but I'm curious to see how it'll change the perception and mass of art.
So we're getting close to time for questions for you guys. So I just want to close with one thing. I equate this to, and I'm not the first person to say this, but it's the closest thing to the Industrial Revolution that I've seen in my time. Yeah. So it's funny to say, but the internet came around when I was starting to get into the industry. 3D was not necessarily a thing, but none of that felt as disruptive as what this is. So for each one of you, and you can pick, going forward, because we all have fears and we all have like what we want this to be, what's your biggest fear, or either what's the most exciting thing that you're thinking about this could bring about?
I mean, for me, the most exciting thing, I actually have relatively few fears around it. I think that you're going to have some people that make some bad decisions and make some poor staffing decisions, and those are going to be the people who sort of eliminate themselves because they don't understand what the tool set's capable of and what people are capable of. So I actually have a lot of hope for how this is going to expand our ability to create amazing experiences more quickly, more nuanced experiences that have your ability to say, I want to look at a lot of stuff from a particular source that speaks to a cultural experience that I've never had, and to be able to see what that looks like and to dive in to do your research more quickly. It's only going to empower more people to express their voice in a more nuanced way.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I feel very confident of what I can put out into the world, and I feel very confident that I could be right next to an AI generated robot that creating something. I also think that AI might possibly need a creative director. They might just do it quicker, but somebody needs to direct them into what a human at the top of a corporate ladder is trying to do. I don't necessarily know if maybe it could suggest something really amazing, and maybe that would trickle down, and you would still need a director to be able to direct the AI. I feel like the humans are always going to need to be involved. I don't think it's just going to be like innovation. It's to be debated, but I feel like innovation also comes from this place that none of us understand. It's just somewhere way deep inside of you. You're pulling it from the energy or whatever of the universe. It's like it's flowing through you, and I just don't know if that is a same experience when it's just code. I don't know, but I feel confident that I could direct an AI to do some pretty badass stuff. But that comes from like all the hard work that I came up to getting here now. And I would love to direct AI. I think it would be really, really interesting.
I think it's interesting to think about too, like if AI at the point it is right now is a marker and a milestone of human thought before all of this, or all of human thought before this was used to train it. But now going forward, all new thoughts are recycled, have it running through those thoughts. So I don't know how to articulate my fear on it, but my fear as a kind of newish dad, I have like a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I think about kids and I think about already like how much virtual life is trying to replace real life. And then you talk about like art computer art or AI art replacing real art and things like that. And I don't know, maybe I'm always like a contrarian. So if something swings one way, then I just go the other way instantly, just out of my personality. But like, it makes me want to like, I don't know, move to the country and like grow plants or something. Like, I don't even know what I want to do out there, but it makes me want to get away from like the over techness of it. Like, it just makes me want to escape that. I think it's going to be amazing though. I think it's going to empower like medicine and healthcare and quality of life for elderly people. And like, I think art is an important industry that we're in, but I think it's going to touch us as humans in ways that are maybe more important for well-being and treating, people that have problems and with their health. So I'm excited to see where it'll go. And I think my only hope is that like the love and the human connection isn't replaced with just the love for the screen and for the robot.
I'd like to open it up to you guys for questions. Yeah, up front here.
Okay, so I hear y'all.
We have a microphone because it's being recorded as well.
All right. So, hello, is this on? Is it working? All right, cool. So I hear y'all talking a lot about certain things, but I don't hear you say emotional intelligence. I think, I'm going to make a comment, and I want to hear what your response is on it, but I think the most important thing for artificial intelligence in art is constructing emotional intelligence algorithms, how to simulate artificial intelligence to be more human-like. I think that's really the true application of art and AI, is to how to simulate human emotions more than anything. So like, what do you think about using art to construct emotional intelligence algorithms?
I think it's already really good at it. That's what's amazing. I think Midjourney happens to be better at it than DALL-E. But like, if I'm like telling it to do something, and ChatGPT, what's amazing to me about ChatGPT is that the conversation remembers the last statement, which allows you to provide additional context and refine a statement. And Midjourney does not have that yet in an easy to use way. But like, if there were a hybrid of those tools and where that would go, and it's, I think, a layup and it'll be there faster than we expect. But like, in ChatGPT, I could say like, write a love letter to my wife. And then I'm like, oh, it's too sappy. Make it more romantic. Make it more this or make it more that. Make it sound like this, And it'll take what I like and modify and keep, adapting to get the tone shaped correctly. Midjourney right now, you could type in the same prompt and you could add like a new word, like make it feel cold and lonely and raining. Okay, make it like one ray of hope or something. But the tools, to me, they already do a really phenomenal job of capturing that emotion. And I think it's only going to get better. And the large language model nature of it, again, what's weird is it was driven by all thought before now. And I'm really curious how recycled thoughts back through the machine and non-organic thoughts back through the machine, what that'll end up doing.
It's a really interesting question you pose, because I think of it, emotional intelligence is definitely based on the human experience. Obviously, that's where it was programmed from us, right? And I think that there's two things. One is, I like that you're saying like make it cold, or things that make us feel sad or make us feel a certain way. I'm just curious, and this is TBD because I haven't had a lot of experience with it, and I'm really curious to see if it can direct itself to emotional intelligence, if that makes sense.
Understanding things
Like
guilt is buried shame.
Yeah, or like, what it's just, there's just so many possibilities. And I also think about like evolution as well, of it's going to constantly be recoding itself, and what does that mean? And where does that come from? So I think that, at this early stage, it's really interesting to be able to us to prompt it and say certain things that make us feel. I'm just curious what it's going to direct itself.
Yeah, I mean, for that to occur, the input from the people creating the tools, emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion, that needs to be something that is in the intent of the code. I think we've seen plenty of examples throughout recent history where engineers have not properly accounted for how their tools and technologies may harm marginalized communities or underrepresented communities. So I think that if we're going to have emotional intelligence in AI, it has to be at the forefront of the inception of that AI.
So true. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's when Elon was like, maybe you guys should hit pause for a second, on continuing to develop this until we have some standards, because
He hit home and he said romance. That's the key. Getting AI to understand the emotional intelligence of romance.
or love,
Or
just love.
yeah, I think it needs to. There's a lot of thought right now around how do we put up guardrails, and I think if we develop emotional intelligence within AI, you won't need the guardrails because it will be able to recognize this is a harmful thing to do.
But that needs to come from
And-
the creator, right?
Yeah, and so that's why I'm saying it needs to start with the engineer that helps develop the algorithm and the model for how it learns. The focus should not be on making the best version of the thing. If you want to achieve that, the focus should be on how do you make the most compassionate version of the thing. How do you engineer the thing in a way that isn't going to perpetuate disinformation or harm or whatever, right? Like that's where you need to start. So that really comes down to like how you hire the team and how you hire the leadership, and like it starts at a very high level before it ever gets to code.
I think, was there a question in the corner here? Oh.
Go next.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. This is going to be a bit of a more of an industry question as opposed to emotional intelligence and such like that. Do you think there will be a point where AI will be used so much and the industry becomes a bit saturated? Will we be able to recognize it's being used? And do you think we will reach a point where we'll be like, okay, stop using it. Let us go back to the old-fashioned way, kind of.
I don't. I think that it's going to be increasingly harder to know if it's being used or not. I think it's already very impossible on some rendering styles that even Midjourney 5 can do, that like the average person wouldn't know is not a photo and things like that. So I think it's going to be intertwined, and it's like I think it's going to heighten the importance of story and concept and things like that.
I do feel, I mean, it's interesting because I'm feeling the pressure of getting really good at AI, because I feel like it's going to be a tool that you need to know, like basic web skills or stuff like that, or just basic design tools that you can use. I feel like if it's like one of those things where I don't want to get left behind, but I want to innovate with it, basically. So I think, I think it'll be interesting once we start figuring out what those ethical questions are.
Yeah, I mean it's here to stay. I think there will always be a place for traditional mediums, for the old school way of doing things, the analog way of doing things. That's always going to exist. There's people that are just purists, or they like the frustration of trying to overcome getting the thing to produce what you want. Like that's always going to exist because those kinds of people exist.
Okay.
All right, we have a question from Carrie Thompson, who's joining us on YouTube, game art student. Addressing the issue of artists having their artwork stolen by AI, is there any way for an artist to protect their artwork online? And if not, do you feel there should be?
There should be, absolutely. If you created a work and you own that work, you should be able to have a lot of say over how that work is used. I do feel that there are problems with it from that perspective. I don't know how you protect your work's other than to like not put them online, right? Like you don't get them into any sort of search algorithm that can then be pulled to put into Dolly or Midjourney or whatever, right? Like that's the only way I can think of to protect your work. There's some things that you can get away with watermarks, but we've already learned that AI has learned how to remove and smear away watermarks. We've learned that it knows how to get rid of signatures, and so it's only getting better at doing that stuff. And a traditional artist in Photoshop could do that as well. They could take the time to go through pixel by pixel and replace the watermark and get rid of that. So AI has just made it less time consuming to do so. I think as a creator, there's always a risk that someone's going to steal your work and take credit for it. That risk never goes away. You just have to be really consistent with your brand and your voice and your messaging. I think there's a risk for the creators of Midjourney that they may face a class action from a bunch of creators that get together. I would assume they are doing their diligence at this point to work with the legal team to prepare for that, though.
Yeah, and much like sampling, it's like, there's so many different rules of whether or not a sample is recognizable or not. So I think that's a legal challenge.
Mm-hmm. Well, while we're getting to the next question, I just want to throw out, because we've all set it up here. In the past, we've sampled stuff and we've put things together. So is the ethical question, or for the artist, would you be just as upset if Midjourney spit out, I used 10% of this, 5% of this, 4% of this came from here? Does that make it more ethical because it's similar to processes that we all use to an extent?
Yeah, I mean, that's the APA format, right? Like, if you're writing a research paper, a lot of it's a literature review, and so you're saying this is my source. We're all okay with that. Maybe that's what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. Next question.
Okay, that works. Have you seen the Twitch stream? Have you seen the Twitch stream of AI Seinfeld?
No.
No.
No, they actually just reanimated like Seinfeld sequences through AI with Twitch with like several AI programs.
Is it the same sort of thing where like that Corridor Crew did?
Yeah.
No? It's different?
It's completely auto-generated. They just like created something that could.
Oh, I heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I got under fire because of some like not race. Well, not just. Well, I think transphobic.
Very problematic.
Yeah, that's the word
Okay.
I'm looking for. I'm sorry, I'm not that good at speaking.
You're good.
He's doing great.
What? Well, it's more or less because they used an older like AI writing program, so it just wrote those jokes.
For me personally, I feel like it's an interesting topic, but like I'm a creative person and I'm not a lawyer, and like I'm not I'm not interested in solving that problem, but I see that it's a problem that needs to be solved. But I'm interested in using it to like expand my creative ability and expand my ability to create things with it. So like all the questions around these themes, they're very protective in nature. Like, what if somebody takes my stuff? What if this and that? And I get both sides of that coin because that work is yours and there's value associated with that. But I also remember back in the day, a really famous photographer that I won't name, she had a real look that she really nailed, and somebody else started to do that style, and then that style became hot, and then I used it on an MTV promo, and like it was all over the place, and she was really pissed off because she felt like her style was stolen. And then I saw her like a month or two later, and she had a whole new look that she had done, and that always inspired me. Like, because back in the day when I was a young artist, people would steal my style, quote unquote, steal my style of a style frame. But I started getting in the mindset of like, by the time they steal that look, I'm gonna have like 6 new looks going that we're gonna sell to somebody. And I just feel like that's the I feel like that mindset as a creative person is so much more enjoyable than getting in the weeds of like the legal vibe of like, well, how do I lock this down? I know there's valid points on both sides, but that's my take.
Excellent. Well, that's all the time we have for questions, and I want to thank you guys all for joining us. And I know a lot of topics were brought up that some people agree with, some people don't. I think our own minds can sometimes be an echo chamber, so whatever we think is just what we're going to keep thinking more passionately about. So I'd encourage you guys to have discussions like this with your friends. See both viewpoints of it. Don't just see the bad or see the good, but see where we can meet kind of in the middle with it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation, and again, thanks for joining us.